Hi, and good afternoon to everyone. And today I will give you a brief overview about the European cable system, and with some highlights, and let's see at the end what we can share and what we can exchange. So cable yarding technology has a long tradition in Central Europe, and has been one of the main harvesting systems in steep terrain for over 100 years. There was some of the first example goes back to 1800s, so a long time ago, but it's just with the First World War there was a boom of this system. Just to give you an idea, at the end of the war, we had 800 kilometers of cableways, so a very huge number. And also try to remember, it's always related to people operating this kind of technology, so a lot of skilled people were available at the end. So, and the first example dealing with the forest operation goes back to the 40s and 50s, and with in the 70s we have some compact models able to relocate in different lots, and it's always related to steep terrain. What today? Today still is cable yarding system and technology as a long use, and is mainly used in steep slope forest operation, and also because it's considered as a friendly, very friendly environmental in regards of the low impact on the soil, and especially in the residual stand. And we want to avoid, for example, contamination in our logging, in our logs, and also we want to minimize the damage on the soil. Because we use mostly in a thinning and a selective cutting operation, and just with the firewood extraction, we will be in a sort of a clear cut. And because it's not easy to install and also operating this kind of technology, it has to be installed and also managed by very professional people. You cannot just buy one and go, okay, I go to the forest, I install one and I start to work. You need a lot of training and also a lot of experience. In Europe, we have all kind of different types and size, from just a small samples with a lot of metal, others with a lot of technology, mounted on different tool on truck, on trailers, and we have a very different versatile model because we have a different also forest operations, and we try to have to deploy this kind of technology in a different configurations. Just to give you an example, I wanted to show this video. It's a good example of the cable system that we have in Europe. As you can see, there is a quite big trees, and then you can see how it works. So as you can appreciate, it's not a clear cut. We are also dealing with standing trees. And it's a good example of the situation that we have in the Alps, both Italian or Austrian, for example, and also French Alps. And here you can appreciate when the logs will arrive at the landing, that you will have, in this case, we have a radio controlled chokers, and we explain later. It's very useful because the operator can release them standing into the cab, and it's very important for the safety reason, and also you can pile it very effective. In this case, the operator will process at the landing, so it's very convenient and you can recover biomass. Just to give you, this is just to give you an idea. We have different possibilities, but it's a good idea. And we can divide in two main types our yarder. We have the sled yarder, that is this model, and it's a very traditional way, and it's mainly for long distance and able to for the downhill extraction. And because it's quite big, you have to transport it by helicopter. So we have to deploy when it's real world, where you have big loads. And despite being very traditional, there is a trend toward modernization. For example, you can put in the joystick to be a bit away from the sled, and also you can have a remote some device to check and verify if everything is working. To install, you need from 2 to 5 operators, and you can. It's very long time effective, and you can be. You should need 2-3 days up to at least 1 week for a very long trials. What is more common now are mobile yarders, because you can relocate from one forest to another one. So it's very convenient to use it. We have a different size configurations. Most common nowadays are that one equipped with a tower, because it's quite easy to install, and you can solve many problems. Most of them, you can have integrated processors, like in this case. So in the truck, you have the tower yarder with the processor, with the cab. So the operator just is there. There's just one vehicle having both machines. In Italy, it's not common because we have some space constraint. So we prefer to have two different machinery, two different machines on the landing. And for the installation, it's quite easier to do it. You require less operators. It can be just a couple of hours when you have a very small lot to do it, or it can be up to 2 days. And you can have, according if it's uphill or downhill. When you are extracting uphill, you just need the 2 drums, so one for the skyline, another one for the mainland. When the extraction is downhill, you need 3 drums, so different configuration and of course different size. We have also, of course, you need so you have the yard, but you need the carriage and the choker to lift and to have the logs to the landing. So regarding to the carriage, all of them, what we have most common are self-clamping. So they are able to stop clamping without a stopper. And we can have a motorized like pulling when there is a motor inside the carriage with the, it can be an electric, hydraulic, or a diesel motor, and is using to power out the rope. Instead, we can have a motorized drop line when inside the carriage there is a winch with this rope to retrieve the material, or we have a self-propelling carriage that is able to run on the skyline with his own engine. Regarding the choker, it was most used the traditional one that you know, but it's becoming quite popular, and you have the possibility to see on the video to use the radio control choker. Here, for example, is the New Zealand model, and then we have also in Italy since just a couple of weeks. They are quite heavy. Not everyone is happy. For example, the people into the forest, they are not very happy to use it because they say they are quite heavy. But it's very important for the safety reason for the operator and the landing when he has to release the choker, because it can be in a quite distance. He he or she doesn't have to climb on the pile, so it's very important for safety reasons. They are, of course, more expensive, but who is using that? They say, oh, it's very handy, it's very effective, and why I waited so much time before buying them. So just to give you a quick example, we use a standing skyline. I don't know if it's, yeah. And we need intermediate support to have the high level, the high or the skyline. And what is important, because we don't have a clear cut, which is mostly thinning, we need to use a lateral yarding, most of the time between 20 and 40 meters, according to the standing trees, and it's very important to cut the tree in a very proper way in order to avoid damage. Sometimes it's not just if you have damage on the standing trees, it's not just because of the yarding system, but sometimes because maybe the felling was not done properly. And as you can appreciate from this picture, most of the time we have very small landings, and we have to deal with that, for example, with the right size, not very big model, but able to do what we have. That's important to have that kind of carriage that is able to go up, to go through this intermediate support. And for example, it's very difficult when you have to decide where to put the skyline, because you need the standing trees, for example, for the intermediate support. So you have to calculate very well. Sometimes you are strict in a proper way. And if we don't have enough big trees, for example, for ensure that the cable yard is not moving, and we have to ensure to have some good anchors, we have to be able to prepare what we call dead man. So you have to put a log into the ground to be sure that the cable yard is not moving too much. Okay, in our books, what we have, I think it's quite similar what you have, but in our way. So it's always, we put, of course, where there is the street, where there is the road, if you put up or down, the different kind of carriage, and how to prepare the anchor, how to secure all the different the guidelines, and how to do in a proper way. And this is the manual that we have at university, but also the people using the cable yard, they should know this stuff. We have two main work systems. One is cut-to-length system. In this case, everything is done at the stump side. So the felling, the cross-cutting, and the limbing, and the cable yard is used to extract the wood, and then you can lift on the load on the tractor. And it can be done on metal miner most of the time, but can be also mechanized system, especially nowadays with the tethered machine. Or we can have, it is becoming quite popular and common, full tree system. So just the felling is a stump side, and the limbing, the cross-cutting is made at the landing, most of the time with a processor. And in this case, it's very important because we can recover the biomass. In Italy, we cannot leave all the branches and the tops spread out in the forest for many reasons, for safety reasons in terms of fire, and also hunters, they don't like to have a lot of stuff going around. So we have to prepare benches inside the forest if we are not able to extract. And to extract just tops and branches, it's quite time consuming, it's a high cost. So if you are able to extract the full tree and recover the biomass at the landing, can be a very good, good revenue for your company. We are able to work in a very long distance, up to 1.5 kilometers, not just in Italy, but all around the Alps. For example, like in Austria, and also Germany, Switzerland, and France. Of course, because the machine is quite expensive, you need very high investment cost. and you have to be very, very careful and very good operator to do it. Despite it's quite big, some part like the carriage, you can transport to the forest with your pickup or on a truck and trailer. This is becoming quite popular. I mean, and it's useful also when you have a very narrow valley that you want to reach the other valley, but you don't have, for example, on that part, a road, forest road, so you can working from one side of the valley and work also on the other part. And especially, and it's one of the main reasons to use cable yarding, because with cable yarding, we don't have to build new forest roads or forest streets. That is very difficult in our case. You have to, it's a long procedure and not always allowed by law. What is becoming very important for us is to have a full suspensions, can be horizontal full suspension with 2 carriages or just with 1. It's important because we can avoid soil damage, and especially, for example, when we had 2 years ago this windstorm, there are so many stumps, they are not properly on the ground now, and if you are able to lift in a full suspension of the logs, you try to avoid to be stuck with this stump, or also you avoid to bring this stump to the landing, and we want to avoid this. We have to say we don't know what to do with this. We have to remove someone, tried also to put some minor explosive part to get rid of these stumps. It's not easy to do it. But full suspension is also quite good for minimize the damage to the standing trees, and also it's very smooth the load that you have, the travel load, and also it's, as you can see from this one, there are 2 carriage and both are independent in using the drop line, so you can lift one part and not the other one independently. That is very important when you are working in some conditions. Nowadays, there is a trend also, of course, and also in forestry versus hybrid solutions, and we have both. There are some manufacturers, they are very advanced, they want to have it. Others, they are just looking and see what there will be on the market, and to have both cable yarders and also the carriage hybrid. And in this case, with the cable yarding, of course, you use less fuel, and fuel is quite expensive, and also in order to be more green, you prefer to use less fuel and also less oil. And probably also the maintenance will be different, probably, but we are not sure about that. Can be easier, should be quiet, and instead having batteries on the carriage. That is, they are used, these batteries, when you have to stop the carriage, the self-clamping, and also for the lateral yarding. And they recharge the battery will be during the load of the material of the carriage. But we have big forest operation, but we have some small. If you remember when Raffaele explained you the forestry in Italy, and not only in Italy, I have to say, we have some small slots, some small private owners with 1 hectare up to 2-3 hectares. So sometimes it's very useful to use a small-scale technology, like, for example, these 2 types. It's a sort of miniature version of the bigger one, and is, of course, smaller, meaning also low investment cost, easy to install. And some loggers, they start with this kind of model, and then they upgrade to a more sophisticated version, and they are easy to maintain. You can have both versions. This one can be used for both for uphill and downhill, but downhill is very painful doing with this one, because it's using, for example, the mainline is into the winch, and can be very competitive with animals because they are quite easy to use it. We did a survey, and there is still in Italy a very huge competence in this case, And just to give you an example, 1 out of 4 logging companies have at least one cable yarding, and they are second only to tractors. And in one case, Trentino, that is where there is also Dolomites, is very well known, it's very famous for forest operation. There are quite the numbers of tractors and yards are quite the same. So some regions are more advanced, and for example in Trentino, because they are quite newer, they are mostly for towers. So the trend is towards towers. They are newer, and companies that they are working with cable yards, they have a bigger business. They can cut more, probably because they are more professional, and they can also go and harvest in a place where others they cannot go. We want also to have a look of the state of the art of the logging companies. So most of them, we had a survey, and most of them, they are a background within the family. So maybe the companies was started by the father or the grandfather, and 2 brothers, they can work together, and the wife, there will be the accountant. So it's still a family business. And most of them, they will continue, so it's a good news. They don't want, despite some economic crisis, they will continue their own business, and most of them, they have profits, very few large, most of them quite small, and some they are just break even, but they can survive. Very few, they have losses. And also because they are dealing with steep terrain and morphology, most of the people think that one of the main issues is to work in this kind of terrain. No, we ask them what are their own issues, what is struggling. And they say that most of the time is related to money, to the economic. In fact, they are they have some problem because of rising costs, and for that, of course, always taxation and regulation, and also unfair competition, especially with the black market. So some companies, they don't declare everything. So this is the main issue for them. So it's not related to the forest. They know how to work, how to operate, because they have the competence. Also, just to give an example on the contract rates, and can be different between different countries, and it's related mostly to the local labor cost. Of course, it can be related of the tree size, distance, and how you extract. We have different, for example, if you could compare Italy and Germany, there are some difference and can be reflected also on the price. Of course, it's more expensive than ground-based, it's nothing new, and we did the comparison, and that is the result. So what's next? Still there is time and space to improvement, and sometimes it's important to think out of the box, and not only in steep terrain, and this is very new, but for example, to use it in flat terrain when the terrain is quite wet. For example, with this climate change and the warming, in some places like Nordic countries in Europe, when the logging system was deployed in winter with a solid frozen soil, because it was there was the capacity to bearing of the heavy machine. Now it's not possible because because the period with this frozen soil is quite short, so there's not enough time to harvest all the material. Or sometimes some winters there is no frozen soil, so you have to change your system, and can be used this cable yarding system. Or also in forest, they are very important for some heritage. So we can use this situation. Of course, there are some challenges, because if you are in flat terrain, you have to use some kind of carriage. You have to find the right anchor, and it's not easy. You have to change, and can be integrated with tethered machine. Not always is possible to substitute with, for example, tethered forwarder, but you can use can be used the harvester in order to remove one of the problem with the safety during felling with the motor manual. So you can use the harvester for felling. They can be cross-cutting the material and also pinning the assortments along the corridor can be a very nice operations. In conclusion, what we can see that we have, of course, there are different yards for different situations. There is not the best one, or in the best situation, you have to see and check what is your forest that you are working. And of course, it's important for us to think about biomass recovery for many reasons. And it's important to have the right workforce, that is meaning skilled operators that are able to work together in a very good way. It's to build a very teamwork, and it's important, especially when you have a new employment. And it's very important to have a training courses. Sometimes it's just the manufacturers that provide some basic training that is not enough. And you can also use and rely on softwares that you have. Also, virtual reality can be useful because you can have in your computer different kind of forests, so different steps. It's important also to consider these training courses for safety, but also for the economic point of view. And yeah, that's all for the system, for the European system, a very general introduction.